Well, folks, let's take a look at how Lightroom interacts with Photoshop, because there is a good point in Lightroom where you might want to take your photo from Lightroom because it works great for a lot of things, but there's a lot of things that Photoshop just does a little bit better. So let me show you an example here. I would take this photo inside of Lightroom, and to start off with, I would work on the white balance, which actually I think it works out pretty well here, but I would start up here in the basic panel at the white balance. From there I would work on the exposure, and here I think I can bump up the exposure a little bit, make the photo a little bit brighter, and then I would probably come down to blacks and increase the blacks a little here just to make some of those dark areas just a little bit darker. And then from here I think I would just move down to my vibrance and increase the vibrance a little bit, and what that'll do is saturate some of these colors in here that are not quite as saturated as some of the others. You can see it gives us a good, takes the background and actually makes the background a little bit greener too. So those are some quick edits that I would work on the photo inside of Lightroom. At this point though, I'm not a huge fan of Lightroom's sharpening setting, because really mainly if you go down here inside of the develop module and you go down and you find the detail tab and you see the sharpening, really it's just one slider, and it's basically, you know, it's off, it's on a little bit, and then it's on all the way, and frankly I don't feel like I get a whole lot of good sharpening from it. So generally I will turn it off, and then I'll go up to the photo menu and I'll go to Edit in Adobe Photoshop CS3. This could just as easily be Photoshop CS2 if that's what you have, but I have CS3 right now, so I'm going to edit it. One thing to note is that when you're editing a raw file, you really can't edit the original or a copy because it's a raw file. So what you want to do here, and the only option that is available, is to edit a copy of the raw file with the Lightroom adjustments applied to it. So you're not editing the original raw file, you're going to be editing a copy. So I'm going to click on Edit, and this is going to take us into CS3, and you can see up here it tells you that it's preparing that file. The image pops open inside of Photoshop, and at this point I would do my sharpening. So the first thing I would do here is create a duplicate layer, and I press Command J on the Mac for that, or Control J on the PC. Zoom in a little bit so we can see what we're doing a little bit easier. And then I go up to the filter menu, go down to sharpen, and my preferred sharpening is using the Smart Sharpen. So I'll click on that Smart Sharpen filter. Inside here we can move around inside of the preview, and you can kind of get a preview of what your sharpening is going to look like. As for amount, I generally would stick it right up around 100, maybe even 125, depending on how much sharpening the photo needs. And we can always pan around the photo to try to get to some different detail areas here. Also, you might want to note just a little tip for you. If you click inside of the Smart Sharpen dialog, if you click, it'll show you the before. And I'm going to make it pretty drastic here. Let's increase the radius way up too. So if I click, that shows me the before, and when I release the mouse button, that shows me the after. So I can see the before and after right on this preview here. So again, normally I wouldn't bump my radius up that high. And we'll take the amount setting maybe even up to right around 130 to 140 here. And that'll give me a nice little edge sharpening here. It's not going to be too noticeable, and you don't really want your sharpening to be incredibly noticeable. You just want it to sharpen up some of those contrasty edges. Alright, at this point I'm going to leave my remove setting to lens blur. I'm going to hit OK, and that is going to apply the sharpening to the photo. If you notice when it's done, if you notice I did the sharpening on a separate layer here inside the layers palette. That's because if I find that there's an area in the photo that I did not want to be sharpened, alright, maybe I want to take the sharpening away from that area, I can always add a layer mask to it, just by clicking on the Add Layer Mask button. It's right at the bottom. I'll even zoom in for you. Right there at the bottom of the Layers palette. I'll add a layer mask to that sharpening layer, and then I can take my brush tool, and with a black brush I can come inside here and I can paint out any of the areas that I'm not too crazy about the sharpening. And maybe down here I kind of want this to be blurry down here, so I don't want to sharpen it. And a lot of the areas in the background I don't want to sharpen as well. So by adding that layer mask, I have the ability to paint out some of those areas I didn't want sharpened. Alright, at this point, just go up to the File menu, click on Save, and Photoshop will save that file. But what's cool about this, because remember, we came in here from Lightroom and we were working on a copy of our photo. Alright, if I go back over to Lightroom, take a look inside of my photo browser, my film strip at the bottom. Notice as I hover over this bottom image, it says right down there, it says 1 of 2. Okay? What Photoshop did is it created a copy. Alright? And so that's the first one. That's the original file, the raw file. The one right next to it. See, it says 2 of 2. If I click on that, look at the name here. Same thing, but it appends an edit on the end of it, and it's a PSD file. Alright, so that's the Photoshop file that I just worked on. The original one, the number 1 here, that's the original raw file. So if I ever want to work on the Photoshop file again, I'd just click on it, I'd go to the photo menu, I'd edit in Photoshop CS3 just like before, but this time I'm okay with editing the original, and the option is there for me because I'm not working on a raw file anymore. This is the PSD, so I can edit that same Photoshop file again. So that's kind of just a quick glimpse at how you might work with Lightroom and Photoshop together. You can do your processing changes to your photo, your exposure, your tone, and your color. And then right when you get done with that is a good time to move over into Photoshop and maybe do some of the more detailed work like sharpening, even any compositing that you might want to do. That's probably best saved for inside of Photoshop.